Jordan humiliated me, my father, Minister Derek Carstairs, hissed. Quiet, he'll hear. My mother, the beloved minister's wife, Victoria Carstairs, whispered sharply. You act as if your son committed a crime. Great-Grandma Phyllis Carstairs' voice was low and calm. She had lived alone since Great-Grandpa passed away 2 years ago. We caught Jordan and Piercy kissing in his bedroom, Mom said, her tone vibrating with fake emotion. Mom knew how to pour it on. I could imagine her lips pinched together, her eyes squeezing out a dramatic tear as she held the polished stainless steel cross in her hands. I had never figured out if she was genuinely religious or simply liked the prestige of being the minister's wife. I don't know where we went wrong, she said. My throat tightened, and I wanted to be sick. She meant me. I was the cockroach in their perfect little life. Then my dad yelled, I will not have this abomination living under my roof or carrying my name. The air went quiet. My heart hammered so fast it threatened a coronary. Not for the first time in the last 20 hours had I lived with this fear. I was the reason their lives were falling apart. What will the neighbors think of us having a homosexual son? Dad again, his voice leaching some of that fire and brimstone he used on Sunday when the important people hung on every dripping word. Our church will think we are hypocrites. We will be disgraced. Jordan has chosen the path of evil. Our son, and Mom said that very loosely, will destroy all the good we've built. I'm Jordan Carstairs, age 20, originally from Milwaukee. We were in southern Colorado, a little town called Trinidad, population 9,000, and I could see the train wreck that was about to happen. My parents were about to banish me from the family, exile me from the life, the friends, all the people I had known. For a town so small, it had 8 churches. That means, if you count atheists, 1,000 people were spread equally among all the sects. Yeah, I'm the evil one, I muttered under my breath. My parents belonged to a very strict, Bible-thumping cult they call a religion. I call it something else. Life was black or white. You either followed the Bible or you didn't. I didn't. I'm gay, not bi, not ace, but old-fashioned, rainbow-loving, unicorn-celebrating gay. I even danced in the Pride Parade on June 28th last summer. I wasn't one of those guys wearing G-strings and body paint. I'm not in that kind of shape. But I did wear a rainbow tee and had a pride flag painted on my cheek. Was that only 3 months ago? 20 hours earlier, 9 p.m. last night, Milwaukee time, I'd been home in my room with my secret boyfriend Pierce, talking, living a normal life, planning college, debating about moving in together. Secret because I dared not confess my nature to my parents for fear of what is happening now. My parents discovered us lying on my bed, making out, and freaked like we'd blown up Dad's church. They threatened to call the police if Pierce didn't leave. By 10 p.m., they'd marched me into the car so we could go someplace to talk. I thought it was a restaurant. It wasn't. My dad, the eloquent minister, only spoke to me in one-word grunts. Mom, in between dabbing at her eyes, she glared at me as if I were a psychopath behind the bars in a prison. One long marathon drive later, we were here. The worst part, they had somehow gotten a hold of my phone and wouldn't give it back. Bored and unable to do anything, I fell asleep. When I woke, they were whispering in German. Mom's family still lives in Germany. They met when Dad was stationed there nearly 25 years ago. German was their private language. I'd never learned it. I was locked out. One word I remember from that long drive. Familie in Schande. They used it the entire trip, and I suspect it always referred to me. We arrived in Trinidad, Colorado about 4 in the afternoon, 19 hours on the road. We were at Great-Grandma's place on the edge of the hills. "He's your grandson," Mom said, her voice all sweetness. "Do you want him living on the streets?" Something about Mom's tone turned my stomach. My own parents were kicking me out and then guilting my great-grandmother about stepping up. Grandma Phyllis's voice, old and frail, broke through the silence. "I'm too old to babysit anyone. I don't have the strength to handle your son. I can't drive anymore. How am I supposed to feed him? My Social Security barely handles me. I'm 83. There isn't much money." There was silence, and then Mom said, "Jordan is not coming back with us. I've already told everyone he's gone to California for college." "We'll drop him off at the Denver Rescue Mission if you don't take him," Dad said, his tone bordering on disgust. "As to money, he worked back in Milwaukee, so he can find a job here." Tears bubbled at the corner of my eyes. My stomach sank, literally, to the bottom of the ocean. If I had my phone, I could call Pierce for help. I don't. I'm helpless. Can't contact Pierce, can't call work, can't call any of my friends, don't have a car or even a bicycle, and I wouldn't be able to find my way back to Milwaukee, not without a phone or a GPS. The life I knew was over. My parents had won. I was trapped as far from home as they could dump me. Only then did the world around me come into focus. Grandpa's garden, an oriental masterpiece. The red leaves of the Japanese maple rustled in the breeze, a soft whisper that broke the stillness. The pond beneath it rippled, ghostly white and orange koi darting under the surface, a shimmer of tranquility in the heart of nowhere. A lie that promised one thing and delivered hatred. I stood on the arched bridge guarding the tiny stream that fed the pond, its gurgle matching the scattered emotions ricocheting inside my chest. A few minutes later, my parents drove off without even a goodbye, the unmistakable sound of the engine belts squealing their panic. I was alone in a state I had only visited once, and that was when I was 9. Chapter 2. Grandma Phyllis rolled her silver walker outside, the worn tennis balls on the front legs scraping against the stone pavement. She gave me a sharp, unblinking look, and reminded me of an old hawk eyeing its territory. "Do you drive?" she said, clucking her tongue. "You are old enough, right?" Her tone was hard as gravel and cold as the winter wind. I almost winced, but remained focused. "Got my license when I turned 17. Before that, I had a learner's permit." "Can you drive stick?" Her eyes narrowed. "Never tried." She snorted. "Better learn so you're not useless. Can you cook?" I folded my arms, not sure why this 83-year-old scared me more than the people who abandoned me. "A little." "Good. I don't eat much. Eggs are in the fridge. I'll take one, make 2 for yourself. Pancake mix is in the cupboard. I'll have 2, you'll have 4. Can you make coffee?" I nodded. "Do you have to have it with sugar, or are you a purist who likes it black?" I didn't know what the correct answer was, so I said, "I mix it with a spoonful of hot chocolate mix. It's kind of a mocha. Sometimes I add ice and make an iced one." She pivoted her walker, the metal scraping angrily across the stone, and muttered, "Edwin did that. Drove me crazy." As I followed Grandma Phyllis inside, I saw the old phone on the wall, black with a long spiral cord and a rotary dial. Its worn plastic suggested it had been new when Carter was president. A chill deepened. My parents had really abandoned me. I was alone. "Do you have internet?" I asked. "Never saw the need," Grandma replied. "You can stay. There's a bed in the other room, but you'll do chores. This ain't a hotel, and it sure isn't Disneyland. You want money? Don't got it. Hell, barely even have enough for myself." Chapter 3. The next morning I wandered around Trinidad. Old houses, old buildings, cold morning air. The sunrise should have cheered me up, but though the sky turned silver, the clouds became the color of dirty car exhaust. Couldn't sleep. Only had $20 in my wallet, barely above the minimum balance in the bank. No phone, no home, no family, no way to contact Pierce. Job 1,000 miles away. Can't drive stick. I'm stranded. Worse yet, I couldn't remember Pierce's number, let alone my job's. That's what phones are for. When I returned to Grandma's place, I found a newspaper on the porch. What century did I land in? Picking it up, I set it by her place at the table. At precisely 6:45, an old alarm clock rang. I jumped. Loud, tinny, it could wake the dead. 1 minute later, Grandma Phyllis shambled over, her tiny hands clutching the walker with a death grip, and ordered, "Get me a yogurt and a banana. Same for you. Make some oatmeal. None of that pre-made crap. The real kind. Slice some walnuts. Throw in some blueberries. You can make that, right?" Later, as we ate, I asked, "Is there a place with computers or internet access?" "Never paid attention," she replied, opening up the paper. Flipping to the back, she humphed. "Hardware store needs a shelver. Minimum wage. Make sure you apply today. Peter was sweet on me before I got married. He'll get you a job." I raised my eyebrows. She took it as a question. "If I'm going to feed you, we need more money." "I don't even know where the store is," I said, sheepishly. She humphed again and took a small spoonful of yogurt, blueberry flavored, like the oatmeal. Blueberries must be the secret to her charming personality. "North Animas Street," she said, "on the corner, not far from the library. After you fill out an application, stop at Bob's Groceries. We need more yogurt and oatmeal, but be back by 1 to make lunch." "What's for lunch?" "Beef, potatoes, and carrots. Now let's talk about chores." It wasn't until after I'd tidied up the dishes and left to find the hardware store that I realized Grandma Phyllis had never asked why I was here. Maybe she didn't know what gay meant. Maybe she didn't care. Or maybe she just wanted someone to boss around. Chapter 4. The hardware store wasn't hiring. Walmart wasn't hiring. Tequila's Mexican restaurant took my application, but didn't say much. About noon, I stopped by the Carnegie Public Library. The library back in Milwaukee had free computers to use, as well as basic internet. Just enough for research, banking, and email. That's all I needed. I applied for a library card using Grandma's address. They gave me a temporary, and I took the next 30-minute slot. I logged into my email. Except for spam, there weren't any new emails. My friends usually texted anyway, so I wasn't expecting much. 10 minutes later, I had composed an email the size of most novels, explaining the last 24 hours, hit send, and waited. Nothing appeared. This is email. Sometimes people didn't check it for days. I logged into Facebook and typed a second message on Pierce's account. He'll read that soon. I hope. Right? I looked at the clock. Time to go. I'd have to check on responses tomorrow. One more day trapped in nowhere, Colorado. With my stomach knotted, I prayed I could find my way back to Grandma's house. Surely, Pierce would respond by tomorrow? He didn't. Chapter 5. It took a week before I found a minimum wage job, part-time at Brandon's Guitars. I learned talking points and how to use a cash register. Brandon, the owner, actually did more than sell guitars. He also custom-built them. Brandon Gillette was in his late 20s, had light brown hair that hung to his shoulders, and 2 silver studs in his right ear, none in his left. He never raised his voice and had a natural, easy smile that appeared often. My first day, he strummed on a guitar he'd finished making, tuning it for the first time as he sang a song about country roads. The following 2 weeks, I'd sent 10 more emails. And then I finally received a response from Pierce. "Never talk to me again, liar," was the preview line, and the email contained 3 sentences. "Your parents told me everything. I feel used. Good thing you fled to California, because if I ever see you again, I will pound your face into the nearest wall." His Facebook and Instagram went private after that. My world ended. It felt like I'd been dumped, but not just by Pierce, but from the whole world. My job, my friends, and all my other contacts ghosted me. They never responded to any email, and since I didn't have a phone, I had no one. Confused, my soul beyond hurt, the anger simmered inside. What had happened? Why didn't anyone say anything? What had my parents told people? My folks still had my phone. Had they been sending insulting texts to my boyfriend and my friends while pretending to be me? Since no one is talking, I'll never know. Was I depressed? I was way beyond that. At work, I tried to help people, but my heart wasn't in it. Brandon must have seen something was wrong because he showed up one day with bagels, and we talked about bowling. Grandma didn't have to worry about the food budget any longer. I stopped eating, stopped talking, still did my chores, still cooked for her. Didn't do anything else. She noticed and frowned. I caught her on the phone one night, scowling. She saw me, seemed about to say something, but said, "We're out of eggs. Buy the large kind. The others aren't worth the calories." The next 2 weeks were the darkest I'd ever known. I went through the motions, made meals for Grandma, kept the place clean, and gave up on saving for a new phone. I stopped going to the library to check email, Facebook, anything. Didn't date, didn't go out except for work, stayed at Grandma's place and watched the koi swimming around the pond. Brandon brought me coffee every morning, his eyes warm. We spoke. He kept the conversation light. One night, Grandma hobbled onto the bridge and handed me a bag of fish pellets. We stood on the bridge, feeding the fish. The koi dove at each pellet, white and orange ghosts in the water. When Edward died, I spent hours feeding his babies. Grandma Phyllis said, her voice softening. Mourning for what was can last years if you allow it. Don't let it. Dinner's at 6, eggs and potatoes tonight. Best start peeling potatoes by 5:30. She pushed her old walker down the path and to the house, pausing a moment. You'll have more friends if you get a shower. Life made no sense, but Grandma was right. It moved on. Chapter 6. Early December. We were setting up Christmas decorations at the store. I hadn't been to the library in months, and the first snow of the season had fallen. The store had a quiet afternoon. Brandon brought an unvarnished guitar from the workshop, along with a rectangular slice of superfine sandpaper. I want you to try something, Brandon said, handing me the pale guitar. It needs a final sanding before we can apply the varnish. Do you have a delicate touch? Think you can handle it? I've never done anything like this. Brandon smirked. Then you don't have any bad habits to unlearn. I took the sandpaper and lightly sanded a curve, then stopped. Pretend you're massaging your boyfriend's back, Brandon said with a smile. Feel the grain, flow with it, imagine it as one in your hand. How did you know I was gay? I haven't spoken about it since I came to Colorado. We both paused. He took the stool in front of me. Your eyes. I sat a little taller. The other day, he began, a guy walked in. You looked at him like you wanted to say something, maybe ask him to dinner or flirt. Brandon's gaze drifted to the Jimi Hendrix poster behind me. Then you jolted. Not much. I would have missed it if I hadn't been right there. I remembered the moment. The guy, college age, like me, needing guitar picks and some wire for strings. It was as if, Brandon continued, his tone delicate, a circuit in your brain misfired. You froze, not like a deer in headlights, more like a computer shutting down. You're imagining things, I said quickly. No, I'm observing. Brandon adjusted the guitar in my hands and placed the sandpaper between my fingers. Sometimes hurt runs so deep that words won't do. Sand the guitar and let the pain out. What if I break it? I said, and realized I'd just admitted everything he'd said was true, in one simple 5-word sentence. "It's tougher than you think," he replied. I began to sand again. He stood behind me, his hand covering mine with a gentle pressure. "Take it easy, feel the wood, work with the grain. It will take time, but that doesn't matter." His hand guided mine over the curves of the body, across the smooth soundboard, along the neck, and up toward the headstock where the tuners would go. The door jangled. A woman walked in. Brandon slid away from me to help her, leaving me to sand the guitar. Chapter 8. I lost myself in the guitar, smoothing every curve, every service, feeling the roughness ease under my hand. It gave me time to think, time to feel, time to focus on something that wasn't me. I didn't think about Pierce or my parents or everything they had stripped from me. Before I left to make Grandma's dinner, Brandon gave me more sandpaper. I wrapped the guitar in a blanket and took it home. After a simple dinner of eggs, potatoes, and a slice of ham, I sat on the bridge in the cold air, sanding and thinking and feeling. The leaves were gone from the red maple, their vibrancy replaced by stark branches that held snow and ice. I mourned what I had lost, the life I'd lived. Pierce, the boyfriend who hated me. Other than that one email, he'd never responded. The surface of the koi pond had frozen over, but the water beneath was still alive. A small heater kept a breathing hole open in the ice. The koi moved slowly in the deep, pale shapes drifting just this side of hibernation. Grandma leaned over the railing and looked down at them. I'd been so absorbed in the guitar that I hadn't heard her approach. "Some of them," she said, even though I hadn't asked, "were the first ones Edwin had placed here when he built the pond back in 1984. That winter was one of the worst on record. Deadly cold, snow so deep I thought the house would collapse. The damned fish still lived, in spite of what the world threw at them. Maybe because of the sanding. Maybe because we'd been living together for months. I let some of the pain out. It hurts." Grandma placed a hesitant hand on my shoulder, the first real physical contact she'd ever shown, and said, "Some scars never fully heal. When Edwin died, I thought I would too." "How did you learn to live again?" I asked. I stood and let her sit on the small stool I had been using. "I washed a dish," she replied. "That was all I could manage. Every day I washed my dishes. Some days that's all I did, but it was enough." I swallowed and took the plunge. "My parents hate me because I'm gay. Why did you take me in?" She let out a long breath, pale steam drifting. "Didn't want to at first, but I'm old, and I need help, and I don't give a damn whether it comes from a straight or a gay or whatever the world's calling people these days." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Then she said the kindest thing she'd ever let slip. "It's selfish as hell, but by God, I'm using you." I raised my eyebrows. "I don't care about your past or my grandson's issues with you. I don't care about his church or his pride or his image. I only care about me. I'm old, my hands don't work right, and I can't walk. Damned if I'm going to rot in a nursing home. You keep me in my own home, and it's yours when I die." 2 days later, Brandon taught me about varnish. With the softest brush, I applied the smelly liquid. Chapter 9. Christmas was weird. I expected Grandma's old phone to ring, my parents on the other line. They didn't call. Some other relatives did, and several of her friends, but Grandma preferred a quiet day.
My granduncle Arthur, one of Phyllis's children, called to wish her happy holidays. They were talking when I walked into the kitchen. "No, damn it, no nursing home," Grandma said. "And I'm not living alone. Jordan is making sure I eat 3 times a day. God, I'm going to get fat. I stepped closer to listen. You mean Jordan? Your great-grandson? The little voice crackled through the ancient phone. Vicky, Jordan's mom, said he ran off and was partying in San Diego, got a girl pregnant. Grandma turned to me. Jordan, you get anyone pregnant? Too busy taking care of you. Been to California? She asked. Colorado is the farthest west I've ever been. Hear that? She snorted, chuckling. And better yet, boy knows how to keep his pants zipped. Sides, he doesn't like girls. I blushed. The voice hesitated. You sure? His folks are telling people something different. Damned kid is standing right here next to me. In Colorado. He's even taken to someone. Don't know if they're past first base. Grandma straightened. One hand braced on the wall. Grandma, he's my boss, I warned. She humphed and continued. Whatever you heard, hell, you been lied to. We set out cinnamon pine cones, with a little tree on the counter hung with too many lights and a crooked star on top. We didn't really use ornaments. Grandma's hands were arthritic and stiff, but she could drape tinsel. So it was a squat little thing that looked like a silver cousin It, with blinking lights. It was ours. Best Christmas tree ever. We ate light. Biscuits, sausage gravy, slices of apple pie. I gave her a little gold necklace I'd found cheap. She gifted me a red tin of applesauce raisin cookies. One of her friends had recreated from an ancient 1938 recipe book. Tucked inside was a note scrawled in her shaky handwriting. Merry Christmas, Jordan, and thank you for putting up with a mean old woman. With a little heart drawn underneath. She made me help her with the necklace, saying, About time I had some gold. Edwin preferred silver. She went quiet for several minutes, staring out the window. Mid-afternoon, a soft knock sounded on the door. Grandma and I had been watching the Broncos versus Chiefs game. It was approaching halftime, and neither team had the advantage. My boss, Brandon, stood at the door, a guitar case in one hand and a small wrapped box in the other. Merry Christmas, he smiled. I don't have family in Trinidad, and I was hoping I could spend the afternoon with yours. The cold rushed in, sharp and sudden, but I was too stunned to notice. I didn't know what to say. My mouth refused to work. Grandma took a breath and bellowed, Jordan, it's cold outside. Shut the door. And are you going to invite him in, or stand there letting your brains dribble out your mouth? I closed my mouth and stepped aside. Come in. As I shut the door, he set the guitar case down and slid his jacket off. You wouldn't believe how cold it is out there. Has it started to snow? I asked, more to get my mouth working than anything else. Supposed to later, he said, draping his coat on the rack. He turned to Grandma and nodded. Mrs. Carstairs, I hope you don't mind me dropping by, but I have a gift for Jordan. One for you, too. Grandma humphed. Don't interrupt my game. Jordan, get the boys some hot chocolate. It's all we got. Doctor doesn't want me to have coffee. Too much caffeine for my heart. Damn doctor. What does he know? Grandma, Brandon's 28. He's not a boy. Ha! When you get to my age, that's still a boy. Hurry up with that hot chocolate, and there's some Oreos hiding in the microwave. The microwave? Brandon asked. So Grandma doesn't eat them all, I replied. Stop talking. The game started. Grandma still managed to unwrap her present, her usual scowl softening into a frown. What the hell is it? An amaryllis bulb, Brandon said, a lazy grin on his face. You plant it and watch it bloom. Jordan, there's a pot under the sink. Go find it and let an old woman watch the game. I led Brandon into the kitchen, noticing Grandma watching us leave, her head giving the slightest approving nod. Chapter 10. I searched under the sink and found an apricot-colored pot with a coiled rope design around the rim. Grandpa kept a bag of soil in the mudroom, and Grandma had never tossed it out. So I filled the pot and brought it back to the kitchen. Brandon held the amaryllis bulb steady while I added more soil, and as we worked, our hands brushed. Neither of us moved. Our fingers lingered, then gently intertwined, almost by accident, almost on purpose. My breath tightened in my chest. I looked at Brandon, at the way his long hair fell forward, carrying a faint citrus scent, at the quiet steadiness in his eyes, at the small, thoughtful curve of his mouth. Something warm unfurled inside me, unexpected and overwhelming. Brandon didn't look away. He stayed perfectly still, as if the moment had caught him too, like a startled cat deciding not to run. Our eyes lingered. He licked his lips. My heart tripped. His lips parted. I let go of his hand and ran my fingers through his hair. He closed his eyes, leaning into the gentle touch. "Having trouble finding the pot?" Grandma yelled from the living room. "Do I need to come in there and show you where it's at?" I cleared my throat, stepped back from Brandon, and grabbed 3 mugs from the cupboard. "Hot chocolate," I said, mostly to myself, "and Oreos." Brandon smiled, soft, knowing, and reached for the kettle. "I'll get the water." We worked side by side, quiet but not awkward, the kind of silence that felt like a secret. I pulled the Oreos from the microwave, set them on a plate, and tried not to think about how my hands were still shaking, or why I smiled every time I glanced at Brandon. We returned to the living room, gravity drawing our eyes to each other. "You'll have to water it," Grandma ordered, not looking away from the television. Brandon's voice wavered as he spoke. "This is for you." He handed me the guitar case, a tender vulnerability flickering in his eyes. I took it, my hands suddenly unsteady, and unlatched the clasps. When I lifted the lid, my breath caught. The guitar I had sanded, raw, pale, unfinished, lay inside, transformed, a smooth, gleaming finish, tuning pegs set neatly along the headstock, a dark fretboard fitted cleanly in place, silver strings stretched in perfect lines over the bridge and saddle. It looked alive. It looked like someone had poured hours, maybe days, of care into it. It looked like a gift meant only for me. Chapter 11. I set the guitar back in its case, stood, and before I could think better of it, crossed the room and threw my arms around my boss. I kissed him, on the lips, a quick, breathless press. "Thank you," I murmured. Grandma swore. "Take the hormones outside. You're blocking the TV." Brandon followed me out back, into the snow-covered Japanese garden and the ice-covered koi pond. The heater still worked, carving a 1-foot hole in the ice so the fish could breathe. They barely moved. We stood there, sharing the peace. Night had settled, and the sky was clear. Stars began blinking above. Brandon stepped closer, his boots crunching softly in the snow, and before I realized it, he was behind me, his arms circling my waist. Warm breath tickled the back of my neck. The wind held its breath, leaving us alone in silence and peace. I turned in Brandon's arms, facing him, enjoying the slight caress of his breath on my skin, the longing clear in his eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. The rest I couldn't put into words. His gentleness had healed me. His kindness had pulled me from the darkness, and whatever this feeling was, it sustained me. Was this feeling called love? It's different than what I felt with Pierce. Something deeper, something pure, something I was afraid to name. We paused, and our warmth, our closeness, could not be resisted. We kissed, losing ourselves in each other's embrace. The world sang inside me, flooding my soul with a love I hadn't felt in far too long. Brandon accepted me for me, let me shine in my way. He didn't judge. He simply cared. Suddenly, pale lights shimmered deep in the ice-covered pond. Delicate pathway lights glowed beneath their blankets of snow, and spotlights traced the stark wintry branches of the red maple. The garden was surrounded by illuminated patches of snow, creating a delicate, ethereal effect that melted the pain in my heart. I cuddled deeper into Brandon's arms. I glanced back at the house. Grandma leaned on the doorframe, clutching her silver walker, her hand on the light switch. Didn't want you idiots to slip and fall. Kids these days, honestly, didn't even take a coat. She humphed as she walked away. But did I detect a chuckle? Chapter 12. February arrived with warmer temperatures and colder winds. Noon became jacket-friendly, but at night the surface of the koi pond froze over again. The snow turned into half-slush, half-ice, and the ice melt pellets scattered across the road and sidewalks became the new holiday decorations. The half-melted snowdrifts were smoke-colored grays, speckled with black asphalt staining what had once been pure and white. The skies were a pale blue with thick clouds drifting overhead. They threatened to snow, but like my parents, they never delivered. I dreaded February. Valentine's was okay. Brandon and I watched Pride and Prejudice with Grandma before we headed to his place. Grandma didn't complain much, because breakfast the next morning was a little late. I don't like February because my birthday is on the 25th. My parents call it abstinence time, 40 days of fasting before Easter. But basically, it's Lent, but they twisted it into their own version. No red meat, no sugar, and definitely no celebrations, like birthdays. They always promised a belated birthday after Easter, which usually meant a steakhouse dinner where the waiter brought out a cupcake with a candle in it. Dad always ordered a medium-rare porterhouse. It always made me feel like a burden. I never told anyone I was having a birthday. I never told Pierce, and I had never told Brandon. The disaster was that Grandma already knew, and she'd recruited her friend, the one who made the applesauce cookies at Christmas, to bake a cake. Not a cupcake, a cake, as big as a pizza tray, round and 7 layers tall, chocolate pudding cake with mint frosting between the layers and a dark chocolate whipped frosting on the outside. Worse yet, it had red frosting roses and green leaves piped along the edges, and in brilliant lime green it read, "Happy Birthday, Jordan," with 3 exclamation points. On February 25th, right after work, Grandma dressed up and had me help her with the clasp of the gold necklace I'd given her for Christmas. She had invited a dozen people over, her friends, including the lady who baked the cake, all the friends I'd made here in Trinidad, and Brandon. We crowded into the living room with music playing from Brandon's phone. The television was playing the latest Survivor episode, and Grandma kept yelling, "You're not a heathen, use a coaster." The happy birthday song was loud and screaming and embarrassed the socks off me. As it ended, Brandon kissed me on the mouth in front of everyone. Grandma rolled her eyes. Brandon dipped a finger in the dark chocolate frosting and smeared it on my nose. I cut the cake, a decent size for everyone, except Grandma. "Boy, you better cut it small. I don't want to catch diabetes." At one point, I took Grandma away from her walker, into the middle of the room, and held her tight as we swayed. A soft coo escaped her lips, and something unexpected happened. "The last time I danced was before Edwin got sick," she whispered. "My bones are too old for this." Yet, we kept dancing. I caught Grandma winking at someone. A moment later, Brandon tapped her on the shoulder. "May I cut in?" And Grandma said the most romantic thing I've ever heard her say. "You damn well better. My knee is about to give out." Brandon and I only had a second together before the old black phone rang, a loud, tinny tone that sliced through the party noise. Modern phones don't get that loud. One of Grandma's friends was helping her get to her walker. I mumbled, "Give me a sec." The plastic of the old rotary was cool, the hum of the receiver a steady electric drone. Grandma had the volume on the loudest setting allowed. "Hello?" I said. "Phyllis?" A man's voice, familiar, but I couldn't place it. "No, this is Jordan," I said. "I'll go get Grandma." "I called to talk to you." "Who is this?" "Arthur." "Granduncle Arthur? Why would you want to talk to me?" Arthur took a loud breath. Brandon stepped beside me, listening. Arthur cleared his throat and then said, "I think your father is driving to see you." My brain froze. The music faded. The phone slipped from my hands. Brandon caught it and held it so both of us could hear. "I'm Brandon, Jordan's boyfriend. What do you mean?" "There is no easy way to say this, so I'll be blunt," Arthur said, his voice weary. "I told my wife you were in Colorado and had never gone to California, that you never got anyone pregnant, because you were gay. She called some people to clarify, and before we knew it, your dad's congregation heard." "Hope he gets lost," Grandma said, scooting her silver walker up beside us. "Got no room for damn idiots. Give me the phone. You two go for a walk." We grabbed jackets and walked to the koi pond. The ice had mostly melted during the day, allowing a clear view of the fish swimming slowly near the bottom. We didn't speak, simply held hands. "Cold?" Brandon asked. "A little. If they show up, what do I do?" Brandon hesitated, as if gathering the courage to say the next part. "You could stay with me tonight, if you want." The whole world stopped. The smile leaked out. I leaned over and kissed him. "You're not alone this time," Brandon whispered. Chapter 13. We were cuddling and kissing while standing on the bridge, the stark branches of the red maple standing watch. Tiny buds dotted the dark branches. In a flat area that the sun had cleared of snow, the first daffodil bulbs had sprouted. They hadn't bloomed, not yet revealing their golden flowers, but the promise was in the air. It was dark, but Grandma had turned on the lights, though the lights were also cleared of snow. The magic and peace was just as beautiful as at Christmas. The remaining snowdrifts muted the street noise, leaving us in the faint rustle of the wind and the gentle trickle of the stream. We embraced, and our kiss was as passionate as any from the movies. "Oh my God!" The woman's screech startled the hidden birds in the nearby pines, and they flew into the sky. Mom in her best dress and Dad in his black preacher suit were planted outside the door, a large wrapped present in Dad's arms. Mom carried a purse with a distinct Gucci GG monogram pattern. Mom's mouth was open, her eyes wide, white-gloved hands clenched. Dad had paled, teeth grit, eyes were stone cold. The world snapped back into winter. I shivered despite the jacket. Grandma stood behind them, and for the first time since I'd lived here, her eyes contained a satisfied glee, but her voice was just as gruff as ever. "Did I forget to mention Jordan is with his boyfriend?" "Ha! This is Brandon. He runs his own guitar store. They've gotten close. I suspect as in dirty movie kind of close." "Ha ha ha." "Hi," Brandon said, sliding an arm around my waist as if he wanted to hold me upright. "Mom? Dad?" I said, my heart thundering louder than the stream below. "What are you doing here? Come back to check on the woman I got pregnant?" Mom flinched before forcing a smile. Dad mumbled, looking down, "How did you hear about that?" Brandon gave my waist a simple squeeze before he faced my parents and said, "It's time for you to leave." Dad's eyes focused on Brandon's arm about my waist. Mom discovered her voice, but it warbled before it gained momentum. "Jordan, dear, remember, we love you. Your little vacation is over, and we've come to take you home. It's what you want. Aren't you happy?" Not a question, a statement. Just like always, Mom was altering the truth so everyone would believe she was the reasonable one. A sluggish disgust, like bitter bile, formed in my chest. They had abandoned their son, me, 1,000 miles away, because I was gay, stole my phone so I couldn't call anyone, left me with an elderly relative who was in no position to deny them. Grandma, standing behind them, raised her middle finger and swore under her breath. My parents never noticed. In her other hand, the one holding her walker, was the phone, its long spiral black cord disappearing into the house. Was Granduncle Arthur listening in? They underestimated Grandma. Dad quickly added, "We need you back home so everyone can see we are a family." A light snow began falling, the tiny flakes dusting his shoulders, Brandon's long hair, and spread across the koi pond. It would ice over tonight, but the fish would survive. My hand shook, my shoulders tensed, and my jaw began to ache because I was holding it so hard. Something snarled deep inside me. Brandon removed his hand from my waist and gripped my hand. "Calm down, love." The whisper carried to my parents, and Mom's smile faded, but only for an instant. Dad gripped the package, slightly presenting it my way, and smiled. "We brought you a new PlayStation 5 for your birthday." That was the trigger. "You want to bribe me?" The words burst out of me. Dad gave me the holy smile he saved for the old woman on Sunday. "It's not bribery." I wasn't having it. "So I'll forgive you for abandoning me, destroying my life?" "Sweetie, you're misremembering. We wouldn't do that to you," Mom said. I ignored her. "You stole my phone. You kept all my stuff. What did you do with it? Burn it? Throw it away?" Dad glanced at Mom, and in a raised, authoritative voice said, "Son, you are delusional." "Delusional," I shouted. "My home was in Milwaukee. You exiled me to Colorado." "You always overreact." Mom adopted her motherly sweet tone, her eyes holding her practiced compassion. The anger began to pass. I stopped screaming and squeezed Brandon's hand back. "Your plan backfired. I found love. I found family. I found people who aren't afraid of who I am. And I'm learning how to play the guitar. I have a new life that doesn't need you." "But we are your parents." This time Dad shouted. "Grandma is more of a parent than you ever were," I said. "You don't mean that," Mom said, dabbing an eye, but not enough to smear her mascara. "I love Brandon," I replied. "He and Grandma are my family now." Brandon turned his head enough to look at me, his mouth slightly open. I faced my parents and mimicked my dad's authoritative tone. "Get out of this house. Get out of my life. Take the PlayStation with you. I never want to see you again." Before Dad or Mom could argue, Grandma said, "Arthur wants to talk to you before you go. Something about funding for your church. Hurry along. Uninvited guests annoy the hell out of me." She held out the ancient phone, its spiral cord trailing behind her. Arthur's tinny voice crackled through the receiver. "Hello? Anyone there?" Epilogue. We sat on the couch, sharing the last slice of cake while the television played the news. The party had ended. Everyone had gone home. Grandma had gone to bed. Tomorrow, we'd have to clean up all the plastic cups and paper plates. Tonight, we were alone. "You said you loved me?" Brandon whispered, his tone uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Did you mean it?" I nodded. "Is it too soon? Maybe it's just rebound, or maybe I'm simply lonely." Brandon nuzzled my neck. "Or maybe we both like chocolate cake." We kissed again, and Brandon pulled away, whispering, chocolate tastes good on you. Let's do this again next year." On the table beside the window, the amaryllis had bloomed, a tall stem with a spectacular red flower that nodded as if satisfied. The end. Hey friends, I'm Gio, writer and narrator. Bentley is beside me. He's in charge of special effects. So those little noises you may or may not have noticed, Bentley was helping. Thank you for staying to the end. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. It makes Bentley happy. Peace, my friends. I love you all. Was this feeling called love? Baby, do you need to go outside? Do you need to go outside? Let's go outside.